I'm not a jealous person at all. I'm not. I mean, I try and do my best, and if it works, I'm very happy. If it doesn't, nothing I can do about it. I'm a happy person. I'm just me. I mean, I come from a small town in Holland where people don't think the same way at all. I mean, they don't have, for example, the American dream. You can put somebody in a garbage bag and look sexy, and some people, in a garbage bag look like garbage.
Friends, this is going to be one of the most disturbing stories that we have covered here because it really, really upsets me how she was handled, and it is so relevant to today. But there is a lot of trigger warning, so we will be discussing some very difficult things, a rather emotional one. Today we are talking about Karen Mulder. Many of you may already know her story, that she was one of the first, to speak and blow the whistle on the whole modeling agency and Gerald Marie, which we discussed in my Linda Evangelista video, and also Gerald Marie's connections and ties to Epstein. She blew the whistle on everything. It gets so dark, but guess how she was treated? Her own sister, which I do believe her sister moved the way she did out of fear, her family as well, out of fear. They didn't want Karen to die or be taken out of here. I think they were threatened behind the scene as well. So I give them a little grace in that regard. But her family came out and discredited everything that she said because she went on live television to report on what was done to her and was discredited.
In 2001, one of the most sought after models in the world goes on a talk show. She, Karen Mulder, frantically starts name dropping everyone that had either assaulted her or sold her to be assaulted. This list would include royalty, politicians, cops, and her own family. But before she'd be done getting through that list, she'd be taken off the stage and eventually put into a psych ward, paid for by the very person she claimed started selling her in the first place. Her agent and owner of Elite Paris, the man who signed her at just 15 years old, Gerald Marie, who, by the way, would be prosecuted years later with an insurmountable amount of and sexual claims, only for the case to be closed in 2023 due to France's statute of limitations, which could have been avoided if anyone in the French courts had taken her seriously at the time she reported them, because yes, she did report them. And if that wasn't enough, I have something even more infuriating. One of the names she dropped during that talk show was Jean-Luc Brunel. He was an Epstein associate who was found dead in his cell in 2022. He was jailed on suspicion of trafficking of minors. Sorry, hold on. After Karen's 2001 interview, numerous publications would come out claiming that she was going through a psychotic episode. Her parents would publicly blame this outburst on drugs, and her sister Saskia would go on that same talk show just to discredit her sister. Which may sound surprising, but remember, part of her desperate plea for someone to listen and do something included the abuse she endured in her childhood. So it's safe to say Saskia was also a victim. It's complicated, but it fueled the media and it fueled the tabloids to call her crazy, and she tried to take her own life in 2002. Thankfully, she survived, and she'd returned to that same talk show to confront the host, heard this desperate plea, pulled her from air, and then deleted the tape. So the video of her speaking her truth would be scrapped altogether. The reason that we know this exists is because of his testimonies in the tabloids, hers, and audience members. Everyone called her crazy until the Epstein case started coming out. I read someone here on TikTok, female influencer with a lot of followers, comment once on a video and say that human trafficking was like the new satanic panic. I remember it had a lot of likes, and I was so disturbed then, and I'm even more disturbed. That comment lives in my head when I read this story, because that interview could have saved 20 years of children. 20 years. Then to be put in a psych ward by the very man who first did it, who, by the way, was the ex-husband of Linda Evangelista. Feel free to go down that rabbit hole. This isn't satanic panic. This is real. And the idea of it being satanic panic, like this huge, silly conspiracy everyone's talking about, is actually so destructive. And I feel like the desensitization that we have towards the Epstein files is becoming more and more rampant, because when something is so devastating and so traumatizing and we're not getting a conclusion, our go-to is to turn it into humor, which I do get. I'm not villainizing anyone for that. But if we're gonna do that, we still have to keep this level of anger. It's still happening. And a lot of the victims The people that once were victims are now perpetrators. It is that deep. It is that serious.
We're going to get into it. But first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, karinealourde, where we break down and deep dive the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Of course, we're going to start off with her biography. And we're going to talk about beauty fame and her disappearance, her early childhood. So Karen Mulder, there's not much information out there with her. She's been so traumatized since all that has gone on that she's kind of been a recluse. So we're going to try to put all the pieces together. And I tried my best to verify every piece of information that we have. But of course, with some things, because she just doesn't speak and just basically disappeared, we just don't know. But I'm hoping one day, maybe if she's comfortable, if her mental health permits her to come out and speak and know that she will be believed and supported, especially this time around. The climate is much different. I hope she writes a book. But Karen Mulder was born on June 1st, 1970, or possibly 1968 in the Netherlands. And she grew up in a modest industrial town near Rotterdam. She grew up in a working class Dutch family, far removed from the glamour she would later embody. By most accounts, her childhood was quiet, structured, and conventional, not one that hinted at global fame. Mulder was tall, athletic, and striking from an early age, always looked like a Barbie doll, but she did not grow up aspiring to be a model. In fact, she reportedly wanted to work with animals and once considered becoming a veterinarian. Modeling was not a family ambition, nor was she groomed for it as a child, something that later made her abrupt immersion into the fashion world even more destabilizing. And her father was said to really be against her modeling, but she told her father, listen, I'm going to be so depressed and I'm going to do it anyway, this and that. So she ended up just doing it. He gave in and just like, okay. But initially, her family was not a fan of their daughter being thrust into this world. And who's to say, maybe they kind of foresaw, parents always foresee when something is bad for you. Good parents, that is. Not all parents, but good parents can foresee. But we want to do what we want to do, right?
I had a really nice childhood without worries, and that gave me, certain principles in life that I think you would only learn as a child. You will not learn them in a fashion business.
Her down-to-earth charm comes from growing up in a small town in Holland, where she learned the golden rule.
My parents always had very different ideas about what I should become than I had. So, kind of as a child, you're being pushed toward this very serious direction. My father would have loved for me to be an accountant. Ooh, they saw me looking at this fashion magazine all the time with this contest in it.
Karen's pals soon pushed her into the glamour game.
Because I was always fascinated about everything with fashion and beauty and hair products. And I was just absorbed in this thing the whole time. So they were like, Karen, I think we're going to have to send some pictures.
The newcomer wound up in the 1986 Elite Modeling Agency's Look of the Year contest.
And
A dazzling new diva had arrived.
and what happened? The minute you got into it, right away, were your parents accepting of it?
My parents were not very happy, especially my father. He was very upset. He really didn't want me to, leave Holland and give up my school and start working. But I had a long conversation with my dad. And in the end, I told him, if you don't let me go, I'll blame you for it all my life. And that worked.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Guilt.
Karen Mulder's life changed suddenly in her late teens. In 1988, at around 18 years old, she entered the Elite Model Look competition in the Netherlands. She did not win first place, but her face, soft yet sensual, classically European but subtly erotic, stood out to scouts. She soon signed with Elite Model Management, and from there, her rise was meteoric. Unlike many models who struggled for years, Mulder became a runway an editorial star almost immediately, especially in Paris. Designers and photographers were drawn to her combination of innocence and overt femininity, what the 1990s fashion world often framed as natural eroticism.
From her cuddly come-ons for Victoria's Secret to her rousing runway struts for Versace and Yves Saint Laurent, from the sizzling pages of Sports Illustrated's famed swimsuit edition to the classic campaigns of Ralph Lauren, Karen Mulder is that rare supermodel who is as smart and spirited as she is sexy and seductive. With her regal beauty and feline figure, the Dutch dynamo has attained the status of royalty in Europe.
Karen is a perfect canvas, I would say, for a makeup artist. She's what we all dream of.
She's definitely Hollywood look about her. I think Karen Mulder is a very, very, very voluptuous looking model. And I think that she is
just very fresh and clear about who she is. She's the essence of femininity. She's beautiful, she's nice, she's gentle, she's a divine runway model, she's a beautiful cover girl. And I don't think that she causes scenes. I don't think she has temper tantrums. She's always smiling. She's always very polite. And I think that's very important.
By the early 1990s, Karen Mulder was firmly part of the elite supermodel class, alongside names like Cindy Crawford, Claudia Schiffer, Naomi Campbell, and Linda Evangelista. Her career highlights included multiple Victoria's Secret campaigns and runway shows where she was marketed as a symbol of sensual luxury. Covers of Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar, and Marie Claire across Europe and the US. High fashion work for Chanel, Valentino, Versace, Yves Saint Laurent, Dior, and Jean-Paul Gaultier. Frequent appearances in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues, which broadened her mainstream appeal. She also spoke English very well, French very well, Dutch very well as well. Mulder became particularly associated with a hyper-feminine, overtly sexualized ideal, blonde, curvy by high fashion standards, and emotionally reserved. She was less outspoken than many of her peers, which made her especially easy for the industry to project fantasies onto. She had a very mysterious air about her. At her peak, she was one of the highest paid models in the world, reported as getting $10,000 a day. That's a lot, right? Especially during the 80s, late 80s and early 90s. And despite constant media exposure, Karen Mulder was notoriously private about her personal life. It is alleged that in 1988, at the age of 18, Mulder married French photographer René Bosnay. They divorced in 1993. Mulder stated that her life changed in 1993 when she was shuttling from airport to airport with almost no time at home. She then met real estate developer Jean-Yves Lefebvre in the waiting lounge of a Paris airport. They became engaged, but their relationship ended in 1997. In 1995, she bought a chateau in France and set up a program to provide holidays there for underprivileged children. Mulder gave birth to a daughter, allegedly, but, there's no verifiable pictures of it, where she's saying out of her mouth that it is. But according to fan sites and Wikipedia and other sources that most of you may not deem as reliable, she gave birth to a daughter on October 30th, 2006. And we share the same birthday. My birthday is October 30th as well. Today, where is Karen Mulder now? Today, Karen Mulder lives largely out of the public eye. Reports indicate she returned to the Netherlands and lives a very peaceful, private, secluded life, supported in part by family and disability assistance. She does not participate in fashion retrospectives, documentaries, or interviews. Unlike some former supermodels who later reframed their experiences, Mulder has chosen silence and disappearance over narrative reclamation. She is believed to be alive and in her mid-50s, but no verified recent photographs or public statements exist. By the late 1990s, Karen Mulder had spent over a decade inside the highest tiers of the fashion industry, largely under the management orbit of elite model management, which at the time was run in Europe by Gerald Marie. Dun dun dun. Yeah, the monster, right? Alleged monster. But let's get into it because we covered him in my Linda Evangelista video. If you haven't seen that, check that out as well. Today, Gerald Marie has been publicly accused by numerous women of grape, y'all know what I mean by grape, and sensual assault, including multiple former models. While many cases were dismissed due to statutes of limitation, his reputation has since collapsed, and his former wife, Linda Evangelista, has publicly stated she believes the accusers. This matters because when Mulder spoke out, none of this was publicly acknowledged yet. She was speaking into a culture that still treated such men as untouchable. By 1999, Mulder had largely withdrawn from modeling. Friends and industry figures later described her as increasingly paranoid, deeply depressed, fearful of powerful figures, distrustful of institutions. It is unclear whether her psychological decline preceded, followed, or coincided with trauma. What is clear is that she was not well and not supported. In 2001, Mulder appeared on French television, notably on Tout le monde en parle, where she made a shocking and disjointed allegation. Her claims included that she had been sexually taken advantage of and touched without her consent by powerful men. The fashion industry functioned as a system of exploitation that young models were trafficked socially and sexually to elites, that she herself had been used, threatened, and silenced. Individuals she named or alluded to were Prince Albert of Monaco, executives connected to elite, extremely wealthy unnamed businessmen, and political figures globally. She stated it was a network, and she was used up by many of these men, and she watched young models experience the same, and that they would give her substances. They would give her substances to perform some crazy acts. It's important to note that her delivery was rambling, emotionally unstable, and at times incoherent. So this allowed the media to frame her not as a whistleblower, but as a woman having a breakdown, right? Because many people thought maybe she was on substances then and just started to ramble. But it could just be, I can't even imagine the nerves on national television. Say she was on something, right? And now the truth is just spilling out of you. Regardless of what you say, it's true now, because look at what's been released and what's been happening. No amount of drugs will make you that paranoid, but don't we see the pattern of how that happens in Hollywood to celebrities too? That they label them addicts when they say some strange, outrageous things, and we're like, don't believe them, they're crazy, they're addicts. And then they get institutionalized, and then we just like dismiss it until we find out later that, oh wow, you people are indeed eating children. You people are indeed sacrificing people's parents. They say, oh well, you agreed to this. Well, we'll see that. Do this industry or these powerful people really give you a choice once you're in, or once you've seen too much? Once you've seen too much, it's already too late to back out. For you to back out, it means your life or the life of your loved ones. So there was immediate consequences, legal and psychiatric intervention after she spoke out. Shortly after her public statements, Mulder was detained by French authorities. She was forcibly hospitalized in psychiatric institutions. Courts later ruled her mentally unfit to pursue legal action related to her claims. This is documented facts. What remains disputed is why this happened so quickly and decisively. And institutionalizing her meant that she could not pursue legal action because she would not be believed because she was institutionalized. Do you see how that also happens to a lot of celebrities? Even look at someone like Britney Spears now. So they took her and sent her away to an institution where you can almost say it's like they brainwash these people or feed them with so much substances and do experiments on them to remove thoughts from their head or something. Like they're never the same. Like look at Britney Spears. She's not the same. She's not the same. I want to do a deep dive on her too, but oof. But Mulder later issued a formal retraction and apology, specifically addressing Prince Albert of Monaco. The apology was widely reported. Of course, he accepted the apology. It was framed as acknowledgement that her statements were false. The apology was handwritten, and it was publicized everywhere. It coincided with her continued institutionalization. I think it's important to add what her father said to the press and to the media, and then what she said about her childhood being touched when she was 2 years old. And by no means am I saying that her father was the one who took advantage of her at 2 years old, but I just want you guys to come up with your own conclusions. But this is what British Vogue reported right after the incident. Stated that Ben Mulder blames Coca-Cola, the sniff powder, and lack of food and failure to come to terms with the end of her career for sending his beautiful, intelligent former supermodel daughter into a black hole of despair. Described by her father as broken emotionally and physically, Karen has been under sedation for the past 3 months after suffering a nervous breakdown on the set of a French chat show last October. The 33-year-old Dutch model claimed that she and other girls had been used as sex slaves by senior figures in the police and French government. I'm certain Coca-Cola caused Karen's desperate situation, her father tells today's Daily Express. When we visited her in Paris, we could see for ourselves everywhere there were notebooks full of her tangled thoughts and mad ideas. She was accusing everyone and everything. It was awful to read them. She needs to remain in hospital because she is a danger to herself." End quote. Maybe, and I'm not accusing him of anything, we're speculating obviously because we don't know full on, but could have been self-interest to protect self because of the accusations. We don't know. But Mulder adds that Karen's eating habits must have contributed to her fragile mental state. It hasn't helped that she has never eaten the way she should do. He goes on, even as a child, she used to throw the milk she was supposed to drink with her meal away in her plants. But Mulder, who currently commutes with his wife between their home and Holland in hospital, hopes that Karen will make a full recovery. What she's living through now is temporary, he said, explaining that she is no longer confined to bed and has taken up her childhood hobby of painting. Slowly she'll come to peace. And that was written in January 2002. Karen responded after that on January 4th, 2002. Karen Mulder has restated claims that she suffered sensual abuse as a child as well as repeated RAPE in her adult life. First aired on French TV show. The Dutch supermodel, one of the biggest faces of the early 90s, first made the accusations in an interview for TV in November 2001. Shortly afterwards, Mulder filed a RAPE complaint in France, and a judge opened a preliminary inquiry into the case. But we know with the mental issues, they dismissed her. This week, she confirms her story in the weekly Paris-based magazine VSD. "Everything started when I was small," she says. "A person in my family abused me sensually. I was 2 years old." Adding that she had managed to blank out the memories for much of her adult life. Mulder says she began to have flashbacks of the abuse she suffered during a summer holiday, and now, following much speculation about her mental state since news of the allegations first hit the press, she wants to set the record straight that she was not lying. "When you publish this article, it will be the beginning of the end of my suffering," she goes on. "I want justice, that's all." End quote. And that was her response. And of course, as we're going to see, they forced her to backtrack from all of that. I don't think this was a crazy woman at all. I'm so upset the more I read about this case. But, man, comment below your thoughts. And again, by no means am I accusing her father, but that's a lot of gaslighting. And I don't know a parent on God's green earth that really loved their child that will allow them to look crazy in the media for accusations that are true, even facing death. I don't know. But again, I'm not a parent, so if you're a parent, comment below. What would you do? Or maybe you have done that. If you're not shy, share your thoughts. But I don't know. And then she went on this man's show, the one that she initially whistleblowed at, because the clips are swiped off, like you cannot find it anywhere. So the clips that you will see is her going back on his show. Now, this interview was done in French, so I had it dubbed in English so you guys could understand. So the voices is going to sound a little weird and robotic, but as long as you get the gist of what she's saying. But she went back on his show to, after being institutionalized, writing an apology letter and kind of just laughing it off and then thanking him for not airing the episode. And I don't know, it just seems very off to me. Even his line of questioning after someone had that quote unquote breakdown, you're asking them about their intimate life and their dating and how they like pleasure. It's a weird interview. And he later interviewed her, even in her older age as well. I'm going to show you that years later, asking her if she likes to be tied up and all of this. This interviewer is weird and sick in the head. And I love that the French commenters under the videos of the interviews were chewing him up, calling him malade. He is sick in the head, right? And I love that. They're holding him accountable because back then, people even back then saw something wrong with it. The French audiences were not quick to buy that. She was crazy, though the media pushed it. But, you know, social media wasn't, and exposure wasn't as popular as it is now. So it didn't blow up like it needed to. But the French people never forgot. They never forgot, and they really did not buy it like they wanted them to.
So you were a star of the catwalk. You were on the covers of all the major magazines in the world. Ah, it was the era of the supermodel.
You left the industry. You traveled to the Caribbean. You toured with Les and Forays. You tried to record an album and act. And then one night here on this set, you cracked. It was actually things that came to the surface that suddenly made you paranoid. But there were some real things. And you spent 3 months in a clinic fighting depression, and today you're back and you say, I feel like a whole new woman, the same but better. Well, yes, your personality changes a little. I think when you dig deep inside yourself, you're still the same person. Yes, better. My suffering has always been there throughout my life. It was something I constantly fought against. So I have always been someone who has had a lot of compassion.
What type of man are you looking for?
But I'm not looking. Man, does
it take an effort for you to be here tonight?
No. After the last show, I'm not afraid to come here at all.
But it was really nice of you not to have broadcast it. It's the least you can do.
Okay, let's see. We're going to see if you're average French women. We're going to see if you're a candidate because that's what it's all about, you know? Yeah.
Now, you're still single.
Yeah.
A beautiful girl like you.
Well, yeah.
When you think about how many ugly girls are settled down, yeah, hey, ish. 56% of women make love in the dark. And you?
3% of women tell their partners what they want them to do to them. Would you be in this?
Now you want me to tell you what I want him to do to me.
49% of women refuse to be tied up. Oh, that's 1 in 2 in France. That's not bad, huh? There's 1 in 2 who agree. 66% of women are shocked by sadomasochistic practices. I'm
quite shocked by that. That is to say, perversion has always I find it more like, really, sadomasoch stuff where you take pleasure in hurting someone and those who like to suffer pain. Yeah, I don't like that.
65% of women refuse threesomes.
Never done it.
Really?
Now, around the same time, Mulder's sister, like we said, publicly denied her claims, stating that Karen was mentally ill and delusional. This had devastating effects. It reinforced the narrative that Mulder was unreliable. It undermined her credibility permanently. It left her socially isolated. Whether her sister acted out of genuine belief, fear, or pressure is unknown, but even her parents coming down and taking hold and saying, hey, our daughter took some substances, and they blame it on drugs. They blame it on fatigue from the industry. Because I can imagine if all of this is happening so quick, they're institutionalized, they're shutting you down, these people got power, you don't know who they sent after them. Because you could not speak. These people were untouchable at that time. And their family was just trying to preserve and do the best that they can, right? But of course, it had a mental impact on Mulder. Multiple reports indicate that Mulder attempted to end her life, was hospitalized for severe depression, spent extended periods under psychiatric care in France. She took a lot of pills and was found laying unconscious on the floor by her fiancé at the time, mated by the skin of her teeth. She was just so depressed. The engagement was canceled and she became more and more secluded. Again, these are not rumors. Her hospitalizations are documented. And what is unknown is how much agency she had during this period as well. But it was like she was mentally fighting and screaming just to have a voice. And why is her story now being revisited? So Gerald Marie changed everything, right? When Karen Mulder spoke out, Gerald Marie was untouchable at the time. Today, he is one of the most infamous figures in fashion's Me Too reckoning. Many women have now described being taken advantage of him as teenagers, like being literally raped, being coerced under threat of career destruction, being silenced through intimidation. This has caused many to reevaluate Mulder's claims, especially the core assertion that the fashion industry enabled sensual access to vulnerable young models by powerful men. And then, of course, the Epstein parallel. The structure she described, like young women, elite men, silence, protection, now feels disturbingly familiar in the fact that Gerald Marie was friends with him and all these political figures she described. Some of them, they all were tied to, Jeffrey. It all makes sense. So what can we say responsibly? What can we responsibly say? Is what is established. Karen Mulder suffered a severe mental health collapse. She made public accusations against powerful men. She was institutionalized shortly afterward. She was legally silenced and discredited. Men in her professional orbit have since been accused by others. And here's what remains unproven: the factual truth of each specific allegation, whether her hospitalizations were purely medical or strategically convenient, and whether her apology was coerced. And here's why many people now are changing their tune and believing her. Honestly, it's because they have no choice. Believing Karen Mulder today is not about claiming she was perfectly coherent or legally precise. It's about recognizing a pattern we now understand far better. Traumatized women often appear unstable. Institutions protect power, not truth. Mental illness and victimhood are not mutually exclusive. And one of the things that touched me with this story, why I say it's upsetting, is going down the rabbit hole of how psychiatry was used as a tool of social control over women. And this is a historical reality, in fact. I did a video on Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, which I'll have in the end cards as well, the Linda Evangelista video, where we talk about how they influenced Hollywood and Marilyn Monroe persona. Like, we link that with Hollywood and everything. But just the origins, the dark origins of psychiatry and psychology's biggest figures. And these tools were used to really discredit women, right? Psychiatry did not begin as a neutral, compassionate science. For much of its history was deeply entangled with patriarchy, class power, and sexual morality. So there is a thing called hysteria, the original silencing diagnosis. For centuries, women who spoke too much, expressed sexual autonomy, resisted male authority, showed anger, grief, or trauma were diagnosed with hysteria, from hysteria meaning uterus. It was like women were only supposed to be very meek and quiet and extra submissive to men, where, and again, I'm not like this pro-feminist, person. Y'all know I'm not like that. I'm very balanced across board. But it was very extreme days where you couldn't have a personality. Having a personality or opinion, saying no to anything, meant that, oh, you're going through hysteria. You have no autonomy. They literally expected you to be a robot, just housewife, cook, clean, and whenever I want to have sex, open your legs, be available, push out kids for me. That was it. Anything outside of that, having any ideas at all in your head, meant you had hysteria, and psychology promoted that.
This is one of the most common diagnoses for women historically. From ancient times through the 19th century, women were diagnosed with what was called female hysteria. The word comes from the Greek hystera, meaning uterus. Doctors believed a woman's womb could wander through her body. Symptoms included anxiety, insomnia, nervousness, sexually impulsive behaviors, and many others. Basically, emotion. The most common treatment was forced bed rest. In extreme cases, the woman may have been forced to enter an insane asylum or to undergo a surgical hysterectomy. In the early 1800s to 1900s, doctors would induce hysterical paroxysm, today known as an orgasm, by manually stimulating the genitals of female patients.
In the doctor's office, treatment was promptly initiated, which was nothing more than a pelvic massage aimed at achieving hysterical paroxysm, now normalized as orgasm, but at the time believed to reposition the uterus to its correct place. So many women repeatedly sought consultations and requested this treatment for hysteria that doctors became exhausted by the end of the day. Because of this, they invented a vibratory device to perform the treatment more quickly, eliminating the need for manual intervention by the doctor, and that's how the vibrator was born. At the time, it was known as a healing artifact, owned only by the nobility. Later, however, for some reason, it became extremely popular among women, turning into a product labeled as sinful and losing the context of its original creation.
1800s. Hysteria was a diagnosis given to women with unexplained physical symptoms, and some of these vulnerable women ended up at the Salpêtrière under the care of neurologist Sigmund Freud and Jean-Martin Charcot.
For centuries, hysteria was a catch-all diagnosis for almost any behavior that didn't fit neatly into the rigid expectations of society. A label slapped onto women who were deemed too emotional, too rebellious, or simply too inconvenient, exploring how a supposed illness was used to silence and control, and how its legacy still echoes in the medical world today. A woman could be diagnosed with hysteria for everything from anxiety, shortness of breath, and fainting spells to irritability, loss of appetite, and even a tendency to cause trouble. The ideal woman was supposed to be passionless, submissive, and domestic. Any deviation from this normative desire for education easily land you with a hysteria diagnosis. If a woman was unhappy with her confined life, she wasn't oppressed, she was simply hysterical. Famous was the rest cure, pioneered by Dr. Silas Weir Mitchell. Women were confined to bed for 6 to 8 weeks, forbidden from reading, writing, or even feeding themselves. The idea was to infantilize them into submission, breaking their will completely. They were force-fed high-fat diets to make them gain weight, with the goal of restoring their nervous energy. Meanwhile, men with similar nervous conditions were prescribed an active West cure. Horseback riding, hiking, and vigorous physical activity, the double standard was blatant. Another disturbing treatment was the pelvic massage, performed by a doctor to induce a hysterical paroxysm, what we would now recognize as an orgasm. Surgical interventions like oophorectomy, the removal of the ovaries, were performed under the horrifying assumption that removing a woman's reproductive organs would cure her unfeminine behavior. For women whose hysteria was deemed incurable by these methods, an even darker fate awaited: the asylum. Thousands of women were institutionalized. Often against their will, they were subjected to horrifying conditions, isolation, and further brutal treatments. The asylum became a convenient place to lock away women who were defiant. Husbands could have their wives committed with little more than a doctor's signature.
In the 1930s, a new brain surgery, like the one portrayed here in the movie Francis, was brought to the United States, the lobotomy. It was performed on mentally ill patients all over the country.
Lobotomy gets them home.
Hailed by the media as a miracle cure.
Lobotomy was felt to be mainstream science. It wins the Nobel Prize. They were basically going in and mushing around brain tissue and, unfortunately, in many cases, leaving patients worse off.
The experimental procedure, which partially severed the frontal lobes from deeper parts of the brain, was said to calm and even cure those struggling with mental illness.
Miracle cure to the brain.
Inspired by an ice pick from his kitchen drawer, Freeman would use a surgical pick to enter the brain through the patient's eye socket. He claimed that this could be done by anyone, anywhere, in a matter of minutes, and it would be used for a whole host of ailments.
Hallucinations, obsessive behaviors, feelings of depression and suicide.
This diagnosis framed women's dissent as biological malfunction, removed credibility from their words, justified confinement, sedation, or control, because they would... A woman didn't need to be unwell, she only needed to be inconvenient. Until shockingly recently, grape trauma was not medically recognized. Believe it or not, this is recent. Trauma from being touched without your consent was not medically recognized. That is a recent modern thing. So back then, a woman behaving out of character because she was touched without her consent, maybe by her father since a very young age, hysteria, lock her up. Disassociation, paranoia, fear, or anger were labeled delusions. Women describing abuse were said to be fantasizing or attention-seeking. And then you had people like Carl Jung that believed that children, again, I did a video on him, he believed that children had those type of fantasies and desired to be touched. So psychology is very PDF file. The very beginnings of it. There were a whole bunch of PDF files. Y'all should check that out. So when a woman said, "A powerful man hurt me," institutions often heard, "She is unstable." This pattern didn't end in the 19th century. It simply became more clinical and polite. Once a woman was psychiatrically hospitalized, her testimony became legally suspect. Once you go into a psych ward, you can no longer be believed. You're just delusional. That's the biggest tool they use against anyone. I'm letting y'all know right now, as much as I be speaking on these YouTube streets, if y'all ever hear Karine has lost her mind, y'all would not let that happen to me, right? My Father in heaven would not let that happen to me. Amen, amen. But if y'all ever hear, just know, just know, don't believe it. Have my back, y'all. Have my back, y'all, like I did for Britney Spears fans, okay? Don't, because who going down this rabbit hole? Even in Hollywood today, how it's used even now against men, it's no longer just women. They use it against men as well, that they want to discredit, that just knows a little too much. They want to label you as crazy. They start to expose you with stuff that they made you addicted to substances, right? They gave it to you just to one day, you know, you decide to speak out. They can say, "Oh, you're an addict," and then bust out with the evidence because they gave it to you. Her statements, once she's institutionalized, could be dismissed wholesale. Anything she said afterwards could be reframed as part of her illness. This is crucial. You don't have to prove she's wrong. You only have to prove she's unwell. She's crazy. Do we not to get too political, but do we not have a president that make people sound crazy for caring about something too much? Let it go, guys. Let's move on. That's what they did with women. She's crazy. They tried to do that with Karen Mulder. She's crazy. Let's move on. The tactic has been used repeatedly against women and now today men who challenge powerful men. And another thing is, beauty privilege is really not a privilege when you're a star. Beautiful women are especially disbelieved. Especially the model types. It's not a privilege. Now let's add beauty, because beauty doesn't protect women. It often endangers them. And before I get into the model part, just on a personal tip, and many of you guys can relate in the comments, I know a lot of young women that developed quickly, but they were let me not say young women, young children. We're not going to adultify children. They were young children below the age of 12, but they developed rather, quickly. And they were beautiful girls. They were beautiful girls. And because they were beautiful and developed, other women, adult women, would look at those little girls that would come out and speak their truth about being touched and somehow blame them because they're beautiful or they're developed. And while a lot of people think beauty privilege, you're so lucky to grow up beautiful, it makes you a target when you walk into a room of PDF files. They look at the pretty little girl that's somewhat developed or even underdeveloped. It don't matter. You're a cute little girl. All attention is on you. And because of attention on you, if you grew up cute and you had attention, as little girls, you could relish in attention. You don't know better. Your hormones, you don't fully understand things. Instead of an adult woman educating you on what's appropriate and what's not, an adult responsible man educating you as well and keeping those PDF files away, most of them would turn around and villainize you for your beauty or being developed. And as you grow into an adult, it gets worse. Beauty endangers a lot of people. People don't think that. They just, envy the beautiful woman, this and that. Someone like Karen Mulder, do you not understand the most powerful people in this world that are not used to getting told no, that are used to getting every girl they want, everything? They're going to look at the most beautiful woman in the world that is on that catwalk. A lot of creeps you see at the Victoria's Secret shows, they're scouting to see who's going to be their next victim. And that beauty attracts them. Sometimes there's a blessing in not being conventionally beautiful. There's a blessing in that too. But we're going to talk about Victoria's Secret a little bit later. But beauty creates a constant assumption. There is a pervasive, ugly cultural belief that if a woman is sexually visible, if she profits from her appearance, if she appears confident or glamorous, then she must be sexually available. This is false but deeply ingrained. So when a model says she was violated, many people subconsciously think she knew what she was doing. That's part of the job. She can't suddenly claim innocence. Gerald Marie said the same thing. They knew what they wanted, right? This is retroactive consent, and it is one of the most insidious forms of victim blaming. That you can't be both sexy and victimized lie.
That's why he wants to talk
No.
to me. See, it all comes down to sex all the time.
Of course it does. What do you think we're selling?
Okay.
What are you selling?
Hi, I'm Karen Mulder. Stick around to the 10 o'clock news because I'll be showing you some lingerie. No, this is horrible. Can't do this right now. I'm sorry.
What about a date when you were growing up? Do you remember a date that stuck in your head maybe because you either had a really good time?
You know what? I'm not into these questions right now. I just can't answer them. I'm sorry.
Supermodel Karen Mulder has no problem with naughty nighties, nor does she mind swimsuits, as her spread in Sports Illustrated makes abundantly clear. Seen by 200 million people worldwide and attended by celebrities, the Victoria's Secret lingerie extravaganza is the event every model wants a piece of.
There's no other fashion show that gets so much attention as Victoria's Secret.
And at the end of the night, it is Karen who delivers the knockout blow. But the attention puts Karen in a philosophical frame of mind.
It's good when you feel good.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel good, it's really annoying. I just don't want to live my life that way. I don't want to think that, because one day you might miss it too much. You'd be very unhappy. Then you have to pay photographers to scream Karen. I just like to take life as it comes along. I really try to. What's the point in worrying about things all the time ahead, But it is kind of a weird job, I have to say. It's kind of strange when you look back in the day like that. I hate this. This is horrible. You see, they can push you in the beginning, but then after that, it's you. And people are going to book you again, whether you're good, nice, funny. I mean, I'm a model. Or sometimes you almost feel like a doll. People dress you up. They do your makeup. They do your hair. And I can just imagine little girls playing with me at home and doing my hair and my makeup. But I think being sexy is something person is or just isn't. I don't think it's something you can be. I don't know. You have to have it inside of you already. They give you something that you don't like or you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to wear it. There's no problem whatsoever. But also, the way they shoot their pictures is very tasteful.
So many of those dresses are so impractical that you see models wearing. They're wearing these things that you think you couldn't even wear that outside.
Well, that's why they call it haute couture. And
It's basically the idea there is that nobody can really wear this stuff.
Actually, it's quite funny because backstage, the only time that all the girls stick together is like when there's a photographer taking pictures of a girl that sneaked in and trying to take a picture. Because you'll see like 20 girls half naked jumping on this photographer, taking his camera, breaking it, pulling the film out. It's quite fabulous.
What kind of punishment is that? Now, are you okay yourself? Because I was raised Irish Catholic. This is like I'm always this clothed, even when I'm like in bed at night, I'm wearing this much clothing. Are you all right yourself with nudity, or are you uptight about nudity?
I think it's quite nice when you hide something. You can have nude pictures that, you don't see anything and they can be very beautiful and tasteful. And then sometimes you can do pictures where you're wearing lots of clothes and they can be vulgar. No, I don't feel that need to
exhibit yourself.
No, I
that
don't.
Way.
No.
Well, that's good.
Culturally, we struggle to hold two truths at once. A woman can be sexually expressive and still have absolute bodily boundaries. Models break people's brains because they embody both desire and vulnerability. So society resolves the discomfort by stripping them of victimhood, treating violations as inevitable or deserved. Because you're on the runway in lingerie at Victoria's Secret, girl, you were asking for it and you deserve it. Models are rarely seen as moral, credible, worthy of protection. It's kind of like the Cassie thing with Diddy. Well, you got paid for it. You wanted it. You're just as devious. You're sneaky and manipulative. I don't believe you. This is a lot of people's mind state the more beautiful the woman is. They're slotted into a modern version of horror category even when they are teenagers, even when they are coerced, even when they say no. And once placed there, their pain becomes unconvincing. Models face unique barriers that most victims do not. There's an extreme power imbalance. Models are young usually, often poor or foreign, barely speak the language, or dependent on agents for housing, visas, food, and work. We talked about that in my Linda Evangelista video, so I'm not going to say too much on that. But their parents send them away young, vulnerable, barely can speak the language, dependent on these people for everything. The men they deal with are wealthy, connected, protected by institutions, bigger and stronger than them. Speaking out doesn't just risk reputation, it risks your life. It could mean life or death. We've seen a lot of models turn up dead. For decades, models were classified as independent contractors, had no unions, no HR, no formal complaint channels, so abuse had nowhere to go except silence. When a model is abused, the industry often responds, that's just fashion. You're being dramatic. Everyone goes through that. You'll never work again. Like you're young, but a photographer constantly, their creative process is having you bare. Oh, it's part of the industry. They've normalized being bare, looking like a child, bare. Because even if the person is like 25, 20, whatever, they make you look as childlike as possible and bare and photograph. Like when we will be annoyed with this type of art form that you have to be naked and call it just fashion, even when the models are uncomfortable. The message is clear: endure or disappear. When a woman carries unprocessed trauma, lives under threat, feels trapped and unheard, and then finally speaks, the result is often emotional flooding, fragmented speech, fear and paranoia, loss of coherence. Not because she's lying, but because truth comes out of a nervous system that's been pushed too far. And tragically, the way the truth comes out is used to discredit the truth itself. Because if you're incoherent, discombobulated, all over the place because you're nervous, you better not make not one mistake, because you will be dissected and called a liar. The cruel irony is that trauma looks like instability. We now know PTSD can cause paranoia. Sexual trauma can fracture memory. So yes, they can forget some things. Chronic fear can impair speech. Isolation can look like delusion. So maybe she was rambling and stumbling because she was so afraid that it impaired her speech. You ever seen someone stutter because they're afraid? Come on. But historically, instead of saying what happened to her, institutions said, what's wrong with her? The distinction destroyed countless women, and it destroyed Karen. Notice the pattern. Women speak early, are usually dismissed, institutionalized, or mocked. Years later, others speak, and pattern emerges. Only then is the first woman reconsidered. Not because she changed, not because power finally weakened. Karen Mulder wasn't too early by accident. She was early because she cracked under weight first. She wasn't trying to speak out or be a whistleblower. I really think she just literally broke down and couldn't take it anymore. This woman said she didn't even want to eat. She didn't like food. While she was modeling, she did not. They asked her, what's your favorite food? As I went to look up what some of her favorite things are, she said, I don't like food. The shared pattern all around is when you line these stories up, the same sequence happened. Woman speaks early, man is powerful, institution protects power, woman is discredited, often psychiatrically or morally. Years pass, others speak, pattern becomes undeniable, first woman is quietly reclassified as ahead of her time. Karen Mulder is still in stage 4. This video is to move her to stage 8, where woman is quietly classified as ahead of her time. And this is why early whistleblowers are almost always messy. Early whistleblowers don't have legal coaching, are often traumatized, speak emotionally, contradict themselves under stress, and lack social support. And yet, they are often the most truthful because they haven't learned how to package pain into something palatable. Believing Karen Mulder does not mean declaring every detail proven or turning her into a saint. It means recognizing a structural pattern that has already been violated repeatedly. History has shown us this uncomfortable truth. Women who speak first are rarely believed. Women who survive long enough to speak later are. Karen Mulder may not have survived socially, but she spoke first. And when it comes to Victoria's Secret, man, do y'all see these 60-minute? There's a model that spoke out against the things that are happening in Victoria's Secret. I'm glad she's doing better, and now she's in a time where people can believe her.
Especially in the cutthroat world of modelling. It's an industry that wants to portray itself as the epitome of health and happiness. The reality, though, is anything but. Behind the scenes, devils were at work. A few years ago, Australian sensation Bridget Malcolm strutted that famous runway. But behind her bright eyes and big smile was a sinister story. There have been whispers for years about the dark side of the fashion industry.
Times I've been attacked, times I've been assaulted, times I've been harassed. I've been told to do cocaine, lose weight by my agent. I'd been told whilst I was underage to just have lots of sex to lose weight.
Victoria's Secret is her biggest target, a brand with previous links to Jeffrey Epstein.
I got a very interior glimpse at the machine that was running at that time, and it was really sick. It was really unhealthy.
At the age of 15, an impressionable young Bridget was told by her agent to lose weight. And so she simply stopped eating. Was it right that you were told to have more sex?
Yeah, over the years, I've heard all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, what always worked for me was just to not eat. So the longest I managed to go without eating was 3 days. And I had to quit because I kept passing out. And I was annoyed with myself because I was determined to make it to 5 days. I remember being so angry with myself and feeling as though I'd failed somehow in not being able to survive on just water for that long.
Ironically, as Bridget hit rock bottom, she was more in demand as a model than ever before. Her success defied the trauma her body was going through. How clear was the message from Victoria's Secret that you needed to be super skinny?
Pretty clear.
At 25, she stopped menstruating, her hair was falling out, and she could hardly climb a flight of stairs, let alone walk a runway.
You get harassed, bullied, and then you also get silenced. It's just another form of abuse, essentially. Yeah, and I think it was like a chain of abuse that kind of like went from the top level and trickled down.
Toxic culture at Victoria's Secret, models being ogled by executives, manhandled and harassed.
But recently, the empire has begun crumbling. There were a handful of employees talking openly about a sleazy culture behind the scenes. The owner of the brand, Les Wexner, was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, luring young models into his web by claiming he was a recruiter for Victoria's Secret. After having a breakdown, in part due to her treatment by Victoria's Secret, she underwent 2 years of intense therapy to rebuild her life.
But I just want Karen's story to not get brushed over, and that we remember what was done to her and how she was treated and how women for centuries were treated. And now even these Hollywood stars where people could say, well, they chose that life. They chose to go in Hollywood. Listen, there's a lot I learned because I'm actively researching. But there was a time I wanted to be a Disney Channel star when I was a kid. I didn't know none of this stuff. I ain't know nothing about no Illuminati, nothing like that. So I would have went in there, and can you imagine someone telling me when I realized what's really behind the scenes? Well, you knew what you were getting into. No, I didn't. I wanted to meet all my favorite stars like Raven Simone and all of them. I didn't know y'all was doing stuff like this. I rebuke. So a lot of these people, these models, these young girls, they just wanted to be on the magazine. They wanted the name on the lights. That's it. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's what was presented to us as glamorous at the time. Now with more information, we want nothing to do with Hollywood, but they didn't have it like that. Now if someone actively want to be on these Grammys, red carpets, you want to go to these award shows, you want to be in these movies, hey, I can look at you funny. Because now we really know what's going on behind the scenes. So if you're still seeking fame in that level, yeah, it's a little funny. I'm going to question you because we know better. But there was a time, Karen Mulder, I'm guarantee you, she did not know. And that's why she cracked. That's why she cracked. And when you see the woman smiling and it looked like she bounced back in that interview and she's just so fine. Listen, I would do whatever to save my family's life too. If it was in danger because I spoke out. If I put myself in her shoe, I would come back on that show too and write the handwritten apology letter because I don't want my mom and my dad and my sisters to die. But then she tried to take herself out. Because dang, I gotta live with this. Comment below your thoughts. This was heavy, but I love you guys. Stay safe. Stay safe, especially in these weird, weird times. I'll see you in the next one.